This happened about 2 years ago when I was driving home from my girlfriend's house. It was a little after 1 in the morning, and I was taking a 2-lane road that cut through a wooded area outside town. I had driven that road hundreds of times. There were no houses for miles, barely any streetlights, and almost no traffic that late. About halfway home, I noticed headlights behind me. The car stayed a few hundred feet back for several minutes. Then it suddenly sped up and got right behind me. A red light started flashing from inside the windshield. It wasn't a normal light bar. It looked like one of those small lights people can stick to their dashboard. I figured it might be an unmarked police car, so I pulled onto the shoulder. The car stopped behind me, but the headlights stayed on. They were so bright that I couldn't see much through my mirrors. A man stepped out. He was wearing dark pants, a black jacket, and some kind of badge clipped near his chest. He also had a hat pulled low over his face. The second he reached my window, something felt wrong. Real police officers usually shine a flashlight into the car. This guy didn't have one. He just stood there staring at me through the glass. I lowered my window a few inches and asked what the problem was. He said, "Step out of the vehicle." That was it. I asked why I had been stopped. He leaned closer and repeated himself. "Step out of the vehicle." His jacket looked like a normal black windbreaker. There were no patches, no department name, and no equipment on his belt except what looked like an empty holster. I told him I wanted to see his identification. He reached into his jacket and flashed a card so quickly that I couldn't read it. Then he tried my door handle. Luckily, the door was locked. I immediately called 911 and put the phone on speaker. The man stepped back when he heard the dispatcher answer. I gave her my location and said I had been pulled over by an unmarked vehicle, but I wasn't sure the man was an officer. She asked for a description of the car. It was a dark-colored sedan with a flashing red light inside the windshield. There was a pause. Then she said, "We don't have any officers in that area." The man must have heard her because he started hitting my window. Not knocking, hitting it with the side of his fist. He yelled that I was resisting arrest and ordered me to unlock the door. The dispatcher told me to keep my doors locked and drive away if I could do it safely. I put the car into drive. The man grabbed the door handle again, but I pulled onto the road and took off. For a few seconds, I thought he might let me go. Then his headlights appeared behind me. He followed me. I was doing almost 90 miles an hour down this dark road while the dispatcher kept telling me where the nearest officer was coming from. The fake police car stayed right behind me. At one point, it pulled into the opposite lane and started coming up beside me. I looked over and saw the driver staring straight at me. He was holding something near the window. I couldn't tell what it was, but I wasn't waiting to find out. The dispatcher told me there was a gas station about 3 miles ahead. She said officers were meeting me there. When the lights of the station came into view, the car behind me suddenly slowed down. Then it made a U-turn in the middle of the road and disappeared back into the woods. 2 real officers met me at the gas station. They searched the road but never found the car. They told me the badge was probably fake and that the man may have been trying to get me outside so he could rob me or take my car. A few days later, an officer called and asked me to come to the station. They showed me several pictures of men who had been arrested in the area. I didn't recognize any of them. Before I left, I asked if they had gotten any other reports about fake police officers. The officer hesitated. Then he told me another driver had reported the same dark sedan about a month earlier. That driver had stopped on the same road. But unlike me, he got out of his car. His vehicle was found the next morning with the driver's door open and the keys still in the ignition. The man was never found. Police eventually stopped investigating my case because there were no cameras on the road, and I never got the plate number. But I still drive that way sometimes. And every time a car gets behind me, I watch the headlights until it passes.
I was living alone in a small rental house. My neighbor was an older man who lived across the road that mostly kept to himself, and after 10 p.m., the whole area got quiet. One night, I had fallen asleep on the couch watching TV. I woke up around 1:30 a.m.
because I heard something outside my bedroom window. At first, I thought it was a branch scraping the glass. Then I heard it again. 3 slow taps. I sat up and muted the TV, but everything was quiet. Then the tapping came again, but this time it was at my kitchen window. That window was on the other side of the house. I didn't move. I just sat there, listening. A minute later, my motion light came on in the backyard. I got up slowly and looked through the blinds, but all I could see was the light shining over the grass. I noticed my back gate was open. I always kept it latched because my neighbor's dog would sneak in and dig holes in my grass. I called the police as I was super paranoid at this moment. The dispatcher asked if I could see anyone. I told her no, but someone had been tapping on my windows and my gate was open. She told me to stay inside, lock my doors, and avoid looking out the windows. I remember her saying, "An officer is being sent to your location." For about 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then there was a knock at my front door. It was not loud or aggressive, just 3 light knocks. I stood in the hallway staring at the door. The dispatcher asked me if I saw an officer. I looked through the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch, wearing a dark jacket. He was standing just far enough back that the porch light didn't fully hit his face. "There's a man at the door," I said. The dispatcher then asked if he was in uniform. Then the man abruptly knocked again. This time he said, "Police, open the door." The dispatcher immediately told me, "Do not open the door." She repeated it slower, "Do not open that door." My stomach dropped as the man outside knocked a 3rd time, harder now. "Ma'am, we got a call about a disturbance. I need you to open up." I backed away from the door. The dispatcher said to describe him. He had a dark jacket, jeans, a baseball cap. She told me a real officer is in my area close by and would be in a marked patrol car and full uniform. Then the man said my name. "Emily, I know you're in there." I almost dropped the phone. I had never said my name loud enough for him to hear it. The dispatcher said, "Did he just say your name?" I whispered, "Yes," trying not to burst into tears. She told me to move away from the door and go to a room with a lock. I went straight to the bathroom because it was the only room without a window big enough for someone to climb through. As I locked the bathroom door, I heard the front doorknob slowly turn. Then it stopped. A few seconds later, I heard it again. That was when the man outside started speaking in a completely different tone. Not like a police officer, more annoyed. He said, "Emily, open the door. I'm trying to help you." I heard footsteps move off the porch. For a moment, I thought he was leaving. Then the tapping started again. This time, it was on the bathroom window. It was small, frosted glass, high up on the wall. I looked up and saw the shadow of fingers moving against it. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't scream. All of a sudden, everything went silent. I stayed locked in the bathroom for about 2 more minutes until the dispatcher told me it was safe. When the officer came inside, he asked if I could describe the man in detail. He searched the yard and the woods behind my house, but he didn't find anyone. There were muddy, smudged footprints under 4 different windows. The screen on my bedroom window had been cut halfway open. The officer told me the man had probably been watching the house for a while. He may have heard me on the phone through the window, or he may have already known I lived alone. I moved out 2 weeks later, and as I put my last suitcase in the trunk of my car, my neighbor across the road came over and asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, just shaken up. I noticed him looking past me toward the side of the house. He had a weird grin on his face and said, "It's a shame they never found the guy." It made me feel so uncomfortable, I just put my head down to break eye contact. When I did, I noticed he was wearing the same pair of brown work boots he always wore. Only this time, there was dried mud caked around the soles. The exact same dark red mud from the side of my house. I didn't say anything. I just stared at his boots. Then he said, "You be careful now, Emily," turned and walked back across the road. This happened in a small town in Ohio, where most police calls were noise complaints or people reporting suspicious cars that were usually just delivery drivers. Officer Mason had been on the department for 9 years. Everyone said he was calm, by the book, and not the type of person who panicked. That's why what happened on October 17th, 2019, still gets talked about. The call came in at 11:42 p.m. A woman named Patricia Moore called 911 and said someone was inside her house. She was 68 years old, lived alone, and sounded confused, but not hysterical. The dispatcher asked her location. Patricia ignored her and said, "He's in the hallway, and I can hear him breathing." Officer Mason and his partner, Officer Reed, were sent to the house. It was a single-story home at the end of a dead-end road, with woods behind it and no neighbors close enough to see the front porch. When they arrived, all the lights in the house were off, except one lamp in the living room. The front door was unlocked. Mason's body camera showed him opening the door slowly and calling out, "Police department!" No one answered. They found Patricia sitting on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. She looked terrified. Officer Reed stayed with her while Mason checked the rest of the house. The body cam footage showed Mason walking down a narrow hallway. Bedroom on the left, bathroom on the right, closet at the end. Everything looked normal. He aimed his flashlight toward the closet door, and right before he reached for the handle, the body cam cut to black. No static, no glitch, just black, for exactly 47 seconds. When the footage came back, Mason was standing outside in the front yard. His gun was drawn. He was breathing hard. Officer Reed was yelling his name from the porch, and Patricia was screaming from inside the house. The strange thing was that nobody could agree on what happened during those missing 47 seconds. Mason said he remembered opening the closet and seeing a little girl inside. He said she was barefoot and staring up at him like she had been waiting there for hours. But when he reached down to help her, she smiled and said, "He's behind you." That was the last thing Mason remembered before finding himself outside. Officer Reed told a completely different story. He said Mason never opened the closet. According to Reed, Mason walked to the end of the hall, froze, then slowly turned around and looked toward the living room. Reed said Mason stared directly at Patricia and shouted, "Who else did you call?" Patricia started crying and said, "I didn't call anyone." Then Mason suddenly ran out of the house like something was chasing him. Patricia's version was different from both of theirs. She told investigators Mason did open the closet, but there was no little girl. She said there was a man crouched inside, like he had been folded into the closet. She said he was wearing a gray suit, and his head was tilted so far to the side that his ear was almost touching his shoulder. Patricia claimed Mason looked right at him. Then Mason turned around and said, "That isn't a man." After that, she started screaming. When other officers arrived, they searched the house. No child, no man, no footprints, no sign of forced entry. The closet was empty. The only odd thing they found was a small puddle of water on the hallway floor directly outside the closet. Mason insisted it wasn't there before. The department tried to recover the missing body cam footage, but the file showed nothing. Just 47 seconds of black screen and no audio. At first, Everyone assumed the camera malfunctioned, but Mason's body cam had never done that before and hadn't since. Then the dispatcher came forward with something nobody expected. She said that during the exact 47 seconds Mason's camera went black, someone keyed his radio. The transmission was short, only a few seconds, but it wasn't Mason's voice. It was a little girl whispering, "You sent them to the wrong house." The department checked the radio logs. The transmission was real. It came from Mason's unit, but Mason swore he never touched his radio. A few days later, Patricia's daughter moved her out of the house. The case was quietly marked as unfounded because no intruder was ever found. Officer Mason never went back to work. He said he kept having the same dream. In the dream, he's standing in Patricia's hallway with his flashlight pointed at the closet. The door opens by itself. Inside is the little girl. But behind her, in the darkness, someone is standing with one hand on her shoulder. Mason said he never sees the person's face. He only hears the same words every time. "You sent them to the wrong house."